Welcome back! Gabriel is paying a visit to his grandmother. This is quite an unusual activity for the main character in an adventure game, I think. Anyway, let's take a look around our grandmother's house.
Gabriel grew up in this room. Just being here make him feel safe. And after about 5 minutes, claustrophobic.
That's my Gran. Adorable, as always.
You're such a tease.
He grew up in this room. Does that mean he was raised by his grandmother?
On the wall are portraits of Gran and Gramps when they were young. Gabriel's inherited some good-looking genes.
I thought he bought his jeans. Okay, stupid pun.
Granny's knitting. She whips through that stuff like there was no tomorrow. Steal Granny's knitting? How low can you get?
I only wanted to do that because I knew that message was there.
The wood in the bin is southern pine, and is probably fossilized by now.
I guess she doesn't use the fireplace much.
Grandmother Knight rarely uses the fireplace these days. Too much of a hassle to clean.
I guess I can see that.
Mostly pictures of Gabriel, his dad, and Harrison Knight.
That's his grandfather, Harrison Knight.
Mostly Granny likes soft lighting.
Hey, Gabriel too. Probably not a coincidence.
Fresh carnations. Granny's favorite. The sofa has a worn blue chintz pattern that Gabriel remembers fondly. The magazines in the bin includes issues of Southern Living, Ladies' Home Journal, and Macard. Granny's side chair still has that annoying loose spring in the seat.
Can we read anything?
The magazine bin contains nothing that interests Gabriel.
I guess not.
That clock has been in the Wright family, Granny's family, for centuries.
Any relations to Wilbur Wright and Orville?
The stairs lead up to the attic.
Alright, well, enough sitting here awkwardly in silence across our grandmother. Let's try and talk to her.
How you been, Gran?
Just fine, dear. I'm sorry I bothered you at work, but I was hoping you'd get a chance to go through your father's things in the attic.
Don't be silly. You can call me anytime. Nice weather.
Oh, Gabriel, please. It's been just awful. Muggiest summer of my life.
I hate that kind of weather.
Is there anything you need?
Me? Oh, no. I'm just fine, Gabriel. I have more than enough of everything.
Is there anything?
Alright, that's enough of the talk option. But we can also question her.
Can we talk, Gran?
Of course, my boy. How can I help?
And, like I said, we get the standard topics for everyone, even when it makes no sense. Because why would our grandmother know anything about voodoo? Let's ask anyway.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
Voodoo? What an odd question, Gabriel. Of course, you always were interested in monster movies and all that other weird stuff. You get that from your father and Grandad. I don't know anything about it, dear. Of course, it was very big in New Orleans at one time, but you don't hear about it so much these days. Too much else in the world to worry about, I guess.
I guess.
What do you know about the Voodoo Murders?
Oh, Gabriel, nothing. And I don't want to. I sometimes wonder what this world is coming to.
That's just a side effect of your age, I think.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
New Orleans is very southern. Of course, though, not as much as it used to be when I was a girl. It's gotten much more influenced by the East Coast and that California stuff. Still, it hasn't changed as much as other places, I reckon. We've always been happy here.
I guess this is one of the few people that Gabriel could ask about New Orleans who genuinely has a reason to know more about it.
What can you tell?
My goodness, boy. You've lived here all your life just like me. I can't tell you much that you don't already know.
I guess that makes sense. Let's ask her about herself.
Tell me about yourself.
Me? Oh, surely you have something more interesting to talk about.
Oh, come on, Gran.
All right, dear. What do you want to hear?
And another list of topics.
What do you do all day?
You know how I love to knit and work in my garden? I also take long walks. It's the only way to keep an old body like mine from stiffening up.
You're not old.
Oh, don't be foolish. I'm older than the hills.
Unlikely.
Tell me about the fall you met Grandaddy.
Well, you know I was born Rebecca Wright. My daddy owned a lot of land outside of town. We grew peas, corn, cotton, all kinds of things. It was a good childhood, but my father was very strict. He didn't much let me out of his sight.
Tell me how you met Grandaddy.
I met Harrison at a church revival. There was a traveling preacher back then, a big fella named Reverend Jim. I even remember his slogan, "Come to me to find your way." Your granddad was sitting right behind me and my girlfriend Alma, and at one point, old Reverend Jim was flinging his hair around with his fire and brimstone antics, and a piece of it, one of those small add-on do's for men, went flying off. I swear, Harrison and I were the only ones that noticed. We both started laughing to beat the band. Everyone looked at us like we were a couple of loonies. It was then I knew that he was for me.
Interesting story.
How you feeling these days?
Fit as a fiddle, and don't you worry your head about it.
Spry old Granny, it seems.
Just tell me anything at all.
I had your father when I was 22. The doctors told me I couldn't have any more after him, so I'm afraid I spoiled him rotten.
Just tell me anything at all.
I never loved any man but your grandfather, and I never will.
Just tell me anything at all.
I hate to admit it, but I was a jealous little thing when your granddad and I were younger. I loved him so ferociously, and he did attract the eyes of the ladies, whether he wanted to or not.
Just tell me anything at all.
I get lonely sometimes, but I have lots of girlfriends in the neighborhood. I call one of them if I'm feeling blue.
And you can call Gabriel over, obviously.
Just tell me anything at all.
I wish you'd settle down and give me a great-grandchild.
Oh, Gran.
That's not very likely to happen anytime soon.
Just tell me anything at all.
I had your father when I was 20.
Okay, that seems to be it.
Oh, nothing, never mind.
All right, dear.
It's always a bit weird, these kinds of conversations in games. You're talking to someone that Gabriel has obviously known his whole life. As if we're meeting them for the first time, questioning them like that. But it is nice getting to know a little bit more about the characters, and especially because this kind of stuff is all related to Gabriel himself, since this is his grandmother, obviously. The Knight family.
Tell me about our family.
Who would you like to hear about? Your granddad, your father, or your mother?
And we got a couple of new options now. Harrison Knight is his grandfather.
Tell me something about Grandad.
Your granddad immigrated to America when he was 21. He worked his way through school, met and married me, and we had your father, Philip.
Tell me something about Grandad.
Your granddad supported me and your father with bookkeeping. I'll tell you what, though, he hated every minute of it. Didn't really like bookkeeping one bit. Maybe that was why he had the worst luck with jobs. The Nights he'd come home afraid to tell me he'd lost another. And I would tell him. It didn't matter to me. But he felt ashamed, Gabriel.
That's tough.
Tell me something about Grandad.
Harrison was only 36 when he died. Your father was 8 years old at the time. Your granddad was hit by a streetcar in the business district. Took me nearly a year to believe he was really gone.
I'm sorry, Gran.
I know you are, dear.
That's, quite a sad story.
Tell me something about Grandad.
Did you know that your granddad was a poet? He was! He wrote the most beautiful poetry for me when we were courting. I always thought he should have done something with that gift. But he was such a practical man. Didn't believe in chasing after dreams.
Tell me something about Grandad.
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
Well, in that case, we'll move on to Gabriel's father, Philip Knight.
Tell me about my father.
Your father was my only child. How we adored him. Philip suffered from terrible nightmares, just like your granddad did. They were 2 peas in a pod.
Interesting. Gabriel's also suffering from nightmares. Must be a coincidence.
Tell me about my father.
When Philip met your mother, it was love at first sight. They were married 2 weeks later. Never looked at a girl seriously until then. And he looked at plenty. You have your father's way with women, Gabriel. And your granddad's.
Too much information there.
Tell me about my father.
I wanted to just lay down and die when he and your mother were killed in that car crash when you were only 8. It was the thought of taking care of you that kept me going, Gabriel. The police say your father swerved off the road after being frightened by something. Perhaps a deer in the road or a wild cat.
Wait, so his grandfather died when his father was 8? And his father died when he was 8? That's a weird coincidence.
Tell me about my father.
Your granddad wanted Philip to have a normal life. He was obsessed by that thought. He pushed Philip to go to law school. Philip was driven to art. He painted almost in a daze. He would get so inside himself when he worked.
Tell me about my father.
He always hated it that it was Margaret's money that supported the 3 of you when his painting couldn't. I kept telling him, try something more cheerful, like a landscape or 2. But he couldn't do it. His work was just too dark and disturbing for the public, you know.
Well, judging by the painting in our office, I can see why.
Tell me about my father.
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
Oh well, we'll move on to Gabriel's mother in the next video.